Firas, I wanted to dive into a question, a specific event which caught a lot of people by surprise, I think, including me, because I haven't been following it remotely as closely as Liam, which was the Israeli recognition of Somaliland.
Yeah.
And I'd love to have your thoughts, and then the thoughts of everyone on the panel, of what exactly the Israelis were hoping to gain from that, and what has been the regional reaction to that.
Yeah, I mean, so if we look at the post-October 7th reality in the region, the fact that Israel has been able to take the war to 7 fronts, and effectively so, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, in Iran itself. Yemen and the Houthis is one front that remained sort of challenging, to put a word on it. Even President Trump in the U.S. had a go at it, and I would argue unsuccessfully. And it wasn't the decisive win that he was looking for, and then he found a way to quickly jump out of that one. And so there's an unfinished story with the Houthis in Yemen. And I can see why, from the vantage point of an Israeli prime minister like Netanyahu, he very much wants a foothold right there on the Horn of Africa, opposite the Houthis in Yemen, in which operationally it's going to be much easier to act against the Houthis the next time missiles can come flying. And listen, I mean, I haven't been to Israel, but I know from the reporting and from the many that I talked to that this was a real thing. I mean, Israelis at 3 a.m. on a regular basis, at least 3 or 4 times a week, are sent down to the shelters as a result of this. And so there is an anti-Houthi, anti-Iran rationale for this. But I would argue that we ought to push beyond that. I mean, this is also about projecting power and influence in the Red Sea corridor. The Israelis have the port of Eilat, and they have this competition that you all heard us talk about that has the Egyptians and others increasingly concerned. And so if Israel now has influence and a say and a base in the southern entryway, the southern waterway into the Red Sea, well, that allows it to, have a lot more leverage in the dynamics with Egypt and the dynamics in the Horn when it comes to Saudi Arabia and the way that Saudi Arabia is thinking about the Red Sea corridor. Mind you, by the way, the Red Sea was central and continues to be central to Saudi thinking, not in just the traditional geopolitical ways, but economically, Vision 2030 and the development of ports along sort of the western coast of Saudi Arabia. I can't tell you the number of times that senior Saudi officials pointed out to me that, hey, some 12 to 14% of global shipping goes through that artery, and we really ought to play a bigger role in terms of the development of our ports. So having that position through the recognition of Somaliland allows Israel not only to fend off defensively against Iran and the Houthis, but more proactively shape the politics and have leverage in that entire corridor and with the countries that surround it on either side.
The only thing I'll add to that is, and I think I agree with Firas on the impetus for moving on the Somaliland recognition. It's been on the works for some time. Low-key, people, consider all the issues that get attention on Israel, whether it domestically, whether vis-a-vis the Palestinians, whether Iran. But low-key, the diplomacy was happening. Somaliland delegations were going back and forth. So it had been in the works. The question is, what was the impetus now to recognize? It was partly domestic, to push Bibi on the over the line. And as Firas said, it's a matter of practicality and strategic influence on the Red Sea. But as also Firas said, in terms of the Houthis being a real threat, the Israelis were far more aggressive than we were, despite the Operation Rough Rider that was a 30-day exercise where we hit some things, but not despite the declaring victory by the president. it was a process to gather intel, and no one had that ability, and the Israelis had to start from scratch basically because they felt that the U.S. Really couldn't or wasn't really committed to it. So the force that they brought to bear against the Houthis, given the Israeli capabilities, is quite impressive. And then they also have bases and access to bases throughout the Horn as well.
Kind of looking at the regional picture and picking up on some of the threads that you both mentioned, I think that there is also a little bit of I think I read an anti-Turkey element in this too, given that Turkey has very strong ties with Somalia. You could argue that Somalia is probably Turkey's kind of anchor state in the Horn. Turkey's been a major player there since 2011, really. And in 2024, when Ethiopia was flirting with recognizing Somaliland as well, the Somali government ran to Turkey and signed a big economic military deal. Then that if you don't have a strong Somaliland, would then ostensibly give Turkey the ability to project influence off of Somalia's northern coast as well. If Israel's there helping prop up a strong Somaliland, that really kind of cuts Turkey's ability to project power into the Bab el-Mandeb and the southern entrance to the Red Sea. So I think there's that at play as well. And I think we've seen such a strong regional reaction. We've seen Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey rally to Somalia's defense on that issue, partially because this was happening around the same time as everything in Yemen. So by late December, it was looking like the Emiratis might control kind of that northern point of the southern entrance to the Red Sea in Yemen, and that Israel would be able to control kind of that southern side, or at least project power from Somaliland as well. So I do think there is a very broad kind of regional element to it, even if the impetus might have been the Houthis. That's not how everyone else may have read it.
Fred, I actually, that's a very important point, because that's what I keep hearing from Israeli analysts, the Turkey dimension. But it is actually, if it is indeed part of Israel's reasoning, it's really, it's doing the opposite, ironically, right? Because being on the side of Somaliland, supporting that will only solidify Turkey's presence there. Because Turkey is really capitalizing on all these conflicts in Sudan, in Ethiopia, in Somalia, to strengthen its military presence, its diplomatic and economic engagements. It's one of the top weapons providers to Africa. So if there is more chaos, that will only help Erdogan strengthen his hand.
Just to echo that point quickly too, we've seen Turkey, Saudi Arabia and Egypt as well really doubling down. I think Turkey sent F-16s in the last month, and they're saying that's for counterterrorism. I don't think that Israel or the Emiratis might read it as solely for counterterrorism purposes. And then on the Somali side, the Somali federal government, which hasn't really projected a ton of authority in northern Somalia for decades, really, has recognized this new state, which then could be a pathway or platform for its allies to put, weaponry or trainers or something there as well. So really, seeing a backlash where they're now not only trying to strengthen their foothold in southern Somalia, but also kind of expand that power projection to the north as well.
It's a lot of tit for hat going on. So when the exposure of Emirati RSF funding streams really got highlighted after al-Fashir, really got highlighted after al-Fashir. the Egyptians made it more concerted effort to stem the flow of smuggling. I mentioned Libya before. There's reports that Saudis and Egyptians closed their airspace to Emirati flights, and because of the Somaliland recognition, then the Somalis kicked out the Emiratis from their airport. So there's not like there are going to be readjustments. It's not like the funding supply or armament supply to the RSF is kind of disappears suddenly. I'm sure that Emiratis will adjust at the time that they're proclaiming that they're not doing it anymore as usual. But you see these dynamics constantly on the move. That's endemic to this conflict in centralized over Sudan.